Hi there. Tonight, we'll take a quiet journey into a small, forgotten town. A place wrapped in fog and memory, where every clock once ticked in perfect rhythm. You don't need to stay awake. The story will keep time for you. So, get comfortable. Turn down the lights. Feel the quiet around you. And together, let's step into the town that forgot how to tick and meet the Clockmaker of Silent Hill. He lived in a town that had forgotten how to wake up. Mornings came, but they no longer arrived with the sound of roosters or bells, only with a thin mist that drifted between the chimneys and the smell of damp wood. The man's name was Elias Finch, though most people simply called him the Clockmaker. He had made every clock in Silent Hill. Not the famous one in Maine or the one from horror stories, but a small, quiet town in the middle of nowhere America, wrapped between hills and railroad dust. Every home, every shop, every church steeple, all their ticking hearts came from his hands. He had shaped time itself for the people around him. And yet now, at 67, Elias lived alone, above his shop that smelled of oil, brass, and faint rain. Every evening, when the wind slid down from the hills, he would light his kerosene lamp and sit beside the window, the same window where the reflection of his clocks overlapped like ghostly halos. And lately, he had begun to notice something that didn't belong to reason. At first, he thought it was the fatigue of old age, a trick of the eye, maybe the tremor of his tired hands. But then, one evening, when he looked up at the great clock tower across the street, he saw its hands pause, right at 3:07 a.m. He blinked, thinking he imagined it. Yet the same night, the small mantel clock beside his chair stopped. 3:07. He checked the one in his workshop. The one he'd built for the mayor's wedding anniversary stopped. 3:07. By the time morning came, every clock in town had fallen silent. No ticking, no chiming, just the breath of the wind against the shutters. The town of Silent Hill had lost its time. Elias didn't tell anyone at first. He simply wound each clock again, one by one, his thin fingers tracing over the gears like a priest blessing the dead. The sound of the key turning was the only heartbeat left in his shop. But even as he turned them, as the pendulums began to swing again, the second hands trembled, circled the dial, and, like a sigh, stopped again at that same strange moment. 3:07 a.m. It made no sense. He had built these clocks himself, each mechanism balanced, every gear tested. They couldn't all fail in unison. And yet there it was. The town's heart had frozen at the edge of a minute no one remembered living. Outside, autumn had arrived quietly. The nights had grown longer, the fog thicker. Children walked to school through pale light, and the air smelled of coal smoke and wet leaves. People began to whisper about their stopped clocks. Some joked, others prayed. The pastor said it was a sign. The mayor asked Elias to investigate. He nodded politely, but deep down, he already knew it wasn't a problem he could fix with tools. There was something else moving in that silence, something he could almost hear between the ticks. Sometimes, at night, he thought he heard faint footsteps on the wooden floor below. Other times, he would wake in the dark and swear the clocks were ticking again, all at once, just for a heartbeat. Then silence. On the fifth night after the stoppage, Elias walked through the fog to the old train station. It hadn't been used in years. The rails were rusted, the benches warped with moss. He used to come here as a boy to watch the trains disappear into the dark. Now, the platform was quiet, except for the wind moaning through the signal posts. He looked up at the large iron clock above the platform, its face cracked, one hand missing. Yet somehow, it too pointed to 3:07. And there, in the stillness, Elias felt something inside him shift. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he had actually slept. He would lie down, close his eyes, but dreams refused to come. The night felt endless, a hollow circle of time. Maybe the clocks had stopped because he had stopped. Maybe they were only following their maker. When dawn arrived, the mist glowed silver over the rooftops. Elias sat outside his shop, cup of cold coffee in hand, watching the empty street. The air carried no bird song, no ticking, no sense of movement. Just stillness, thick and patient. A young boy named Thomas, whose family owned the bakery across the road, came running up to him. "Mr. Finch," he said, breathless, "Mama says our kitchen clock's broke again." Elias smiled faintly. "Let me guess, 3:07? The boy nodded. Elias placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Tell your mother I'll come by later." Then, when the boy had gone, he looked toward the tower again. For the first time in his life, he wondered if maybe the clocks had never truly kept time at all. Maybe they had only been echoing what was already broken. The people, their hearts, the town itself. And now, the echo had simply faded. That night, Elias opened his workshop door, lit the lamps, and began to work. He wasn't fixing a clock. He was building something else, something he had never built before. A clock that would not measure hours, but silence. A machine that would keep absence itself in motion. He didn't know why he was doing it, only that his hands wouldn't stop. And as the gears clicked softly together, he thought he heard a whisper behind him, gentle and almost kind. 3:07. He turned, but no one was there. Only his own reflection, staring back at him through the glass of the unfinished clock. And behind that reflection, faintly, a flicker of light, like the heartbeat of a world trying to remember how to move again. The nights had grown heavier since the clock stopped. The town slept without rhythm now, its people drifting through hours that no longer had names. Morning looked the same as evening. Noon came and went like a passing thought. For Elias Finch, time had become a soundless sea. He still woke before dawn out of habit, his bones remembering what the world had forgotten. The silence in his workshop was so complete that when he struck a match, he could hear the flame breathe. He would sit for hours among his sleeping clocks, the air thick with the scent of brass and oil, and think about how time had once seemed endless, a comfort, not a question. Now it felt like an old friend who had quietly left without saying goodbye. One morning, he decided to visit the church tower. It was the highest point in Silent Hill, overlooking the river and the pale horizon. The tower's clock was his proudest creation, enormous, precise, its gears the size of wagon wheels. The key to the tower hung on a rusty hook behind the altar. The pastor had given him permission long ago, though neither of them had been up there in years. The climb was slow. Wooden steps creaked beneath his boots. Dust fell in soft spirals. Each landing smelled of damp stone and candle soot. The air grew colder the higher he went. When he finally reached the gear room, he paused, listening. Even here, where once the great pendulum had sung across the town, there was no sound. Only wind moving through cracks in the walls. The hands of the clock were frozen, both pointing to 3:07. Elias ran a finger along the brass edge, felt the thin layer of dust. Then he saw something faintly carved into the metal beneath the dial. Letters so small they could have been missed 100 times. For Yim, who stopped time, he frowned. He had never inscribed anything like that. Yim? He didn't know those initials. Or maybe he didn't want to remember. The memory came slowly, like the soft lifting of fog. There had been another clockmaker once, a woman named Evelyn Marsh. She'd apprenticed with him nearly 30 years ago. Bright, sharp, endlessly curious. Her laughter used to echo through the workshop like chimes in the wind. She had wanted to build a clock that could catch a moment and hold it forever. Elias had told her such a thing was impossible. That time could not be stopped, only measured. But she hadn't believed him. And then, one winter, she vanished. Left her tools, her drawings, her half-built clock on the bench. The townsfolk said she left for the city. But Elias had always felt her absence differently, like a heartbeat gone missing. Now, standing in the tower, staring at the inscription, he felt something twist inside him. Could it be her initials? Could the moment frozen at 3:07 be hers? He closed his eyes and listened. Somewhere deep within the clock's body, a faint tick echoed. Once, then again. He bent closer. The gears weren't moving, yet the sound was real. Tick, pause, tick, as if the tower itself was breathing. He stepped back. The light through the window had changed, softer, dimmer, like dusk though it was still morning. He looked outside. The streets below were empty. No carriages, no smoke from the chimneys. The whole town looked paused. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and for a fleeting second, thought he saw a figure walking across the square. A woman in a dark coat, hair caught in the wind, head slightly bowed. Then she was gone. That evening, Elias returned home and sat before his unfinished creation, the clock that would measure silence. He placed his hands on the table, closed his eyes, and tried to recall Evelyn's face. But memory betrayed him. He could only remember her voice. She used to hum while she worked, a low, wordless tune, almost like the rhythm of a pendulum. He began to hum it now, softly. The room seemed to shift around him, the air thickening, the walls breathing faintly. One of the clocks, one he hadn't touched, clicked. Its hands moved. 3:06, 3:07, then stopped again. But this time, the sound didn't fade completely. It lingered like a whisper trapped in glass. Elias leaned forward. Evelyn, he murmured, half a question, half a memory. The air answered with silence. He didn't sleep that night. He walked through his shop, touching each clock like an old friend, whispering apologies to everyone. "I didn't mean to stop you," he said. "I only wanted to understand." At some hour that had no name, he stepped outside. The street lamps flickered softly in the fog. Across the road, in the bakery window, the faint glow of a clock face shimmered, one of his own. And there, just for a moment, its hands began to move backward. 3:07, 3:06, 3:05. He watched, unable to breathe. Somewhere far away, a train whistle echoed through the mist, long, low, and mournful. Time, it seemed, had started to remember itself. The night after the clocks began to stir, Elias Finch could not rest. The sound of that distant train whistle lingered in his mind like a fading heartbeat. He hadn't heard a train pass through Silent Hill in over 20 years. The old tracks beyond the marsh had long been swallowed by fog and rust. Yet the sound had been real. low, trembling, like iron sighing through the cold. He waited until the sky turned that fragile color between night and dawn, then took his coat, his lantern, and stepped into the street. The town was quiet, too quiet. The same lamps flickered with a tired, orange glow. The bakery sign creaked in the wind, though there was no wind. Every door was closed, every curtain drawn. Only the clocks in his pocket, a small brass one he'd built himself, ticked faintly, uncertainly, as if unsure whether to move forward or back. The road to the marsh lay past the old station. He hadn't been there in years. Once, it had been the town's beating heart, travelers arriving with laughter, with letters, with the scent of new places clinging to their coats. Now the platform was just a skeleton of its former self. Rotted wood, broken benches, ivy swallowing the timetables whole. Elias lifted his lantern. The light trembled across the peeling sign. Ash Hollow Station. And there, beneath the ivy, the old clock. It too was frozen. 3:07. The sound came again, faint, distant, the low rumble of a train. But when he looked down the tracks, there was nothing. Just fog, thick, rolling, endless. He stepped onto the platform. The boards moaned softly under his weight. The air here smelled strange, a mix of rain and something metallic, like old coins left in a pocket too long. He walked toward the edge, lantern raised high. The mist glowed faintly around him, swallowing the light within a few feet. Then, for just a second, he saw it, a shape moving through the fog. A train, old, enormous, its black iron body gleaming faintly under ghost light. No fire, no smoke, no sound, yet its wheels turned. Elias froze. His breath caught in his chest. The train slowed, then stopped. Its doors slid open with a hiss that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere. Inside, the light was golden, warm, familiar. He hesitated. His reflection looked back at him in the glass, pale, uncertain, old. Then another reflection appeared beside it, a woman's silhouette. Evelyn. He dropped the lantern. The glass shattered, spilling light across the platform like liquid gold. A soft voice drifted from the train. Elias. He turned. She was standing in the doorway, exactly as he remembered her, coat buttoned to the neck, hair tied loosely, eyes deep as midnight. "I told you," she said gently. Time could stop. He stepped closer. "Evelyn, where have you been?" "Everywhere," she whispered, "and nowhere." Her hand rested on the metal frame. "You built the door. You just never knew how to open it." He stared, not understanding. "The clocks." She nodded. "Each one you made remembers me. Each one holds a moment you refused to let go. When they all stopped together, you finally listened." He wanted to reach out, but fear rooted him still. "What happens if I come with you?" Her smile was soft, sad. "Then you'll see what we built together. The world where time sleeps." The train's lights flickered, growing dim. The sound of ticking filled the air, hundreds, thousands of tiny heartbeats overlapping. Elias closed his eyes. He thought of his workshop, his town, the endless ticking that had filled his life with comfort and noise. Then he thought of her, the unfinished clock, the laughter, the promise. He stepped forward. The platform vanished beneath his feet. The world became light and motion and silence all at once. He opened his eyes. He was standing in a place that wasn't a place, a vast, endless plain of silver fog and stillness. Clocks floated like stars, each one glowing softly, hands moving in gentle rhythm. And there, beside him, Evelyn watched with quiet pride. "See," she whispered, "it's beautiful when it stops." He looked around. Time itself seemed to breathe, slow, eternal. For the first time in his life, Elias Finch smiled without fear. Back in Silent Hill, dawn rose pale and empty. The clock tower's hands began to move again. 3:07, 3:08, and somewhere, faintly, a train whistle echoed, soft, distant, like a lullaby fading into morning. The next morning never truly came. It was more like the night decided to fade gently instead of ending. The sky turned a soft shade of gray that felt neither alive nor gone. The kind of color that lives only between two moments. Inside the old clock shop, the air was still. Dust floated like pale gold motes in the thin sunlight that managed to slip through the blinds. Every clock on the walls, dozens of them, stood frozen at 3:07 a.m. Only one ticked, the small brass one on the counter, the one Elias had carried to the station. The shop smelled of oil and oak, the familiar scent of time in his hands. But something had changed. The silence no longer felt heavy. It felt waiting. Elias sat by his window, staring at the street. The town seemed almost alive again. Mrs. Halpern was sweeping her porch across the road, and young Henry was running with his wooden hoop, laughter spilling through the mist. And yet, when Elias blinked, the street was empty again, just fog curling around lamp posts. He pressed his fingers against the glass. The cold bit through his skin. Later that day, or maybe it was another night, he walked down to the church. Father Albee was there, lighting candles along the altar. His face looked thinner, his hands slower. When Elias entered, the priest turned and smiled. "I wondered when you'd come," Father Albee said. "You've been quiet." Elias hesitated. "Have you heard the clocks?" The priest chuckled softly. "I haven't heard any clocks for a long time, my friend. I only listen to the wind these days." Elias lowered his head. They all stopped. Every single one. The towns, too. Father Albee nodded. "Maybe it's meant to. Time moves strangely in places like this. It bends for those who refuse to let go." The words sank deep. Elias felt something stir in his chest, a memory he'd avoided touching for years. He looked toward the church's wall clock. The brass pendulum hung still. 3:07. That evening, he walked back home as the fog grew thick and soft. His shop window glowed faintly. Inside, something shimmered, a light that pulsed like breath. When he stepped in, the ticking began again. Not from one clock, from all of them. Each clock on the walls trembled with life, the hands quivering just slightly, whispering a rhythm that spread through the room like water. The light shifted golden, then silver, then blue. He felt her presence again. Evelyn. Her laughter was not loud, but gentle, like chimes touched by wind. "Do you remember," her voice said, soft and near, "when you told me you wanted to fix the world?" Elias swallowed hard. "I wanted to stop it from breaking." She smiled through the flicker of light. "You can't fix time, Elias. You can only love it for what it gives you." He looked around at the hundreds of clocks, his life's work, and realized that each one carried a story. The clock he made for the baker's wedding, the one for the mayor's daughter when she turned 10, the one that had hung in the schoolhouse until it burned down in '87. Each one a heartbeat, borrowed from the same endless rhythm. Outside, the fog pressed closer to the glass. Through it, he could see faint outlines, the train tracks glowing faintly like veins beneath the earth. He stepped outside, lantern in hand. The sound of ticking followed him, a soft river of time flowing behind. And in the distance, a low hum began, that same sound he had heard before. A train, moving through the night that wasn't night. He walked toward it, the ground damp and alive beneath his boots. When he reached the edge of town, he saw the light again, dim and golden, seeping through the fog like dawn caught halfway. The train was waiting, the same one, but this time the platform was crowded. Men in hats, women with shawls, children holding toys, all still as photographs. Their faces were familiar. The baker, the postmaster, the old woman from the tailor's. All of them frozen. All of them with watches on their wrists, stopped at 3:07. He walked among them slowly. No one moved, no one breathed. But their presence wasn't frightening. It was peaceful, like stepping into a memory that didn't want to fade. Elias reached the end of the platform and placed his hand on the train's door. It was warm. He turned, looking once more at the sleeping town beyond the fog. And he understood they weren't gone. They were waiting too, waiting for him to finish what he'd started. He smiled faintly. Just one more repair, he whispered. The train's door opened with a sigh. The next morning, a boy named Henry ran past the clock shop. He stopped, noticing the window open. Inside, all the clocks ticked together again, perfectly, beautifully, and every single one read the same time. 6 a.m. The sun was rising, but the chair by the window was empty. Only a small brass clock sat there, its hands moving steady and free. The world beyond the platform was made of fog and light. When Elias stepped onto the train, the air shifted, gentle, cool, alive with faint ticking, like 1,000 distant watches breathing together. The door closed softly behind him. No conductor, no passengers, only the sound of motion, slow, graceful, endless. He sat near the window. The seat cushions felt new, though they looked older than memory. The wood along the walls glowed faintly with polished brass lines, tracing the shapes of forgotten stars. Outside, the town of Silent Hill receded into mist. The rooftops, the bell tower, even the familiar outline of his workshop melted into the pale gray horizon. And then there was nothing but a slow-moving blur, light and shadow folding into one another like sleep itself. Elias leaned his head against the window. The rhythm of the train lulled him, steady and kind, the heartbeat of something larger than time. He thought of the clocks, the people, the small lives he had helped mark in hours and minutes. He thought of Evelyn. Her laughter returned, faint at first, then clearer. Not an echo this time, but a presence beside him. He didn't turn to look. He didn't need to. "Is this it?" he asked softly. Her voice came like the hush between waves. "It's the rest you've been chasing, Elias. The moment between 1 second and the next." He smiled, eyes half closed. "It feels familiar." "It should," she said. "You built it. All these years, with every clock you mended, you were mending this." He opened his eyes. The fog outside had changed. Shapes moved in the distance. Silhouettes of old houses, bridges, trees that swayed without wind. Each one shimmered like glass before fading into the dark. "What is this place?" he whispered. "The in-between," she said, "where time comes to breathe." The train slowed. Through the window, he could see a faint glow, warm and golden, like dawn breaking out of the sea. A station appeared, not one he recognized. The sign was simple, carved into wood that looked untouched by age. End of line. The train sighed to a stop. Elias stood. His legs felt light, as if they remembered no weight. He carried no lantern, no tools, only the small brass clock that had always followed him. He stepped down onto the platform. The air was soft, like silk against his skin. There was no sound, no birds, no wind, no ticking. Only peace. He walked slowly. The platform stretched farther than it should have, curving into light. There were others ahead, shapes familiar and kind. Evelyn was there, waiting. She smiled. "You fixed it." He looked down at the brass clock. Its hands moved freely, smooth and quiet. 6 a.m., the beginning of day. He smiled faintly. "I suppose I did." They stood together, hand in hand, as the train behind them vanished into mist. "Will it stay this way?" he asked. Her answer came like a sigh of wind through leaves. "As long as someone listens to the ticking." He nodded. "Someone always will." And with that, the platform began to fade, not into darkness, but into calm, endless light. Back in Silent Hill, the morning bells rang for the first time in years. The townspeople woke to the sound of their clocks, all perfectly in sync, moving as one. Children laughed, doors opened, the fog lifted from the streets. In the clockmaker's shop, sunlight poured across the floorboards. Every clock glowed faintly, as if lit from within. On the counter, the small brass clock ticked gently, steady and strong. Next to it lay a single train ticket, old, yellowed, stamped with the words, "For every beat of every clock is just another reminder that we're still connected, even when the hands stop moving. Take care of the mornings. They're fragile things." Elias Finch. Father Albee folded the letter carefully, pressing it to his chest for a moment before setting it back down. He whispered a prayer, though he suspected it wasn't needed. As he turned to leave, he thought he heard something faint, not from the shop, but from beyond the hills. The sound of a train, moving slow and distant like thunder asleep. He smiled. That night, the town glowed under a quiet moon. No one stayed up late anymore. They didn't need to. Something in the air had changed. A calm that felt earned, gentle, complete. The clocks ticked softly in every home, a lullaby of metal and memory. And somewhere, out beyond the marsh and the silver fog, a faint light drifted down the tracks. A train without passengers, without destination, humming to itself as it crossed through the dream of time. Inside its empty cabin, a lantern glowed. On the seat by the window lay a brass clock, ticking in perfect rhythm. The hands moved without hurry, pointing toward morning. The world had remembered its heartbeat, and Silent Hill, once frozen at 3:07 a.m., learned to breathe again. The bells would ring, the fog would come and go, and the clocks would keep their gentle promise that no second is ever truly lost, only waiting to be heard again. And somewhere, deep within the hush of night, a whisper lingers. Sleep now. Time will keep watch.